Today's topic is business competitiveness in Pennsylvania. And while rankings don't always tell the entire story of increased competitiveness, there are some good stories to tell. Joining me are two gentlemen via Google Hangout that authored recent studies that dramatically improved Pennsylvania's rankings, and they're here to tell us why. Fred Nicely is the Senior Tax Counsel for the Council on State Taxation, headquartered in Washington, D.C. Thanks for joining us, Fred.
Thank you.
And the editor-in-chief for Site Selection magazine, stationed in Norcross, Georgia, is Mark Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us, Mark.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
First, Mark, I want to start with you. Pennsylvania increased in your organization's rankings fairly dramatically in the past few years in the category of new expanded corporate facilities. What's Pennsylvania's status now, and where were we before?
Pennsylvania consistently ranks quite well in our annual ranking of new and expanded qualified corporate projects. Our most recent numbers from 2013 place Pennsylvania fourth in the nation, meaning it had the fourth highest number of qualified projects. So it's actually doing extremely well. I believe last year it was third, but this year it's fourth, so it continues to perform quite well in our ranking.
And in the Northeast?
Yes, actually, we do rank states regionally. And again, for 2013, Pennsylvania did rank first.
And Fred, cost tallied the most dramatic increase in Pennsylvania's competitiveness with your tax administrative scorecard. First of all, tell us what the tax administrative scorecard is, and what is our grade?
Sure, Carl. Cost, the Council on State Taxation, we have been doing this for over 10 years, and we've found that it's been highly successful in getting states, the state policymakers, which is the state legislators, to improve their overall state tax administrative processes. And we're very, very pleased to see that from our last scorecard that we did in 2010, we had Pennsylvania with a disappointing D grade. However, with our newest scorecard that came out in December of 2013, the score for Pennsylvania vastly improved to an A minus. So it wasn't the highest states that we had in the scorecard, but it was the most improved state, going from a D all the way to an A minus.
And what were some of the reforms that moved Pennsylvania up that ranking?
Yeah, probably the biggest reform that we saw, Carl, was the change from how the tax dispute process works in Pennsylvania. One of the critical components that we have is looking at states having independent tax tribunals that taxpayers can appeal to from the Department of Revenue administrative hearing process. And Pennsylvania used to have the Secretary of Revenue involved in that process. Last year, there was legislation that was introduced to remove the Secretary of Revenue from the process, so you have a much more independent tax tribunal. And the governor has the ability to put two people on this board. It has to be approved by the Senate, and those folks have to have at least 10 years state and local tax experience. And that's something else that we're looking for, is not only that you have that independence, but you also have that expertise. Other things that Pennsylvania was able to approve was if you are subject to a federal audit as a business, when you have to report those changes from what the Internal Revenue Service made, it can take a lot of time. You can literally have to file hundreds, sometimes thousands of different reports with the states on those changes. Pennsylvania increased their time period to our recommended 180 days to make those changes. And then Pennsylvania also improved on a new category that we added for our latest version of the scorecard, and that's doing with transparency. It's looking at the state departments when they issue their letter rulings, that for the most part, those are made public. And then in addition, that when there's decisions that are issued by your Board of Finance and Review, that those are going to be public. And that was all done via legislation. So we're very pleased with the changes that Pennsylvania was able to make.
Mark, when you talk to companies looking to locate or expand their corporate headquarters, what do you hear the most about what they're looking for? Is it tax structure? Is it workforce? Access to markets? Infrastructure? What are some of the things that you hear?
Well, it's actually all of the above, Carl. Typically these days what we're hearing is availability of the right workers, usually meaning skilled workers. That tends to be a criterion that appears across industries. We survey our readers annually on the criteria that are most important to them. And the top 5 in our most recent survey were the existing workforce skills, which I just mentioned, transportation infrastructure, state and local tax scheme. 4th is utility infrastructure. And 5th is land and building prices and supply. So those are the top 5 according to our most recent survey.
What are some of, Mark, this is for you again, but what are some of the things that you think Pennsylvania could or should do to achieve that ranking of number 1?
Well, it's really a matter of, it comes down to the total number of new and expanding projects. I can't point to any one thing that Pennsylvania could or should do. It's simply a matter of maintaining a strong business climate.
Have you seen the Marcellus Shale natural gas boom have any effect?
That actually did have a lot to do with Pennsylvania's numbers. I did a little bit of analysis on which industries were most active during 2013, and it turns out that oil and gas was in fact the business sector with the most number of projects, which according to our numbers was 25. So that really did help the state a lot, all the investment going on in the oil and gas sector.
Fred, beyond tax administration, what changes should Pennsylvania be looking to make us more attractive compared to our competing rival states?
Yeah, Carl, that's a really good question. We have over 600 members and almost all the Fortune 500 businesses. And one of the biggest complaints we hear about Pennsylvania is the net operating losses and how you still have caps in your state. Now, we realize it's been improved. It's gone from 3 million to 5 million.
Right,
so
but most states have full carryover.
There needs to be some improvement, but it still hasn't gone far enough. Other complaints that we hear is related to the property tax. On your property tax, you don't have good central state oversight, and that tends to be a problem. When you look at a new scorecard that we're going to have coming out, Pennsylvania, unfortunately, still is going to be scoring fairly low on that.
Mark, as a nation, are we losing jobs on our shores to overseas headquarters? Is that trend starting to reverse itself again? What are you finding?
I'm sorry, was that on the national level?
Yeah, at the national level.
We are seeing a lot of investment back into the United States. We hear a lot about reshoring, for example, and we've been writing about that now for the past few years. But I think it's important to point out that much of that reshoring is really about not so much new factories, but bringing equipment into existing factories. So there's a lot of investment going on, and it's not necessarily all jobs. It's putting newer, more efficient equipment in place here in the States. So I don't have concrete numbers to point to in terms of jobs this year so far, but we certainly are seeing reinvestment in U.S. industry, which is great.
One of our concerns is that the United States is considered to be the highest tax nation in the world, with Pennsylvania's highest flat business tax rate with a corporate net income rate of 9.99%. If you make all 50 states nations, Pennsylvania is the highest taxed entity in the world. Fred, how do we overcome that?
Carl, we round up, we call it a 10% rate, because it is really right there. I think what really has folks concerned is that you not only have a high corporate income tax rate, but there's been some trouble getting the capital stock in the foreign franchise tax, to be eliminated. So we're hoping that, what was in the budget, that's going to be gone in 2016. Just remove some of the complexity having to do multiple, tax calculations.
We hope that goes away too, Fred. And where can people go to learn more about you, your organization, and the tax administrative report card?
Thanks, Carl. We have a really good website that you can go to. It's www.cost.org, and it has all that information. You can click on our special report section. We have our policy statements out there, and we also have amicus briefs and other types of information that you'll be able to get from our website.
And Mark, thanks for joining us this afternoon as well. And where can people learn more about you, Site Selection Magazine, and your rankings?
Thank you. Our website is siteselection.com. And on that site, viewers will find not just our Governor's Cup ranking, which we've been talking about, but a number of other rankings we do throughout the year, including top metros, top business climates, and most competitive state-level economic development agencies, as well as global rankings. So I'd encourage viewers to learn more about those as well.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.